Welcome, everybody. It's Football Discussion Daily Time. My name is Joe, and I'm here with the co-host,
Gio.
CGO, or George. Today was a run-of-the-mill day in the Premier League. Every single home team won 2-1, so there's nothing really to talk about. Just kidding. Brighton beat Nottingham Forest 2-1. There's some great goals in that game. Fulham beat Tottenham 2-1. Crystal Palace lost to Manchester United 1-2, and Chelsea lost to Arsenal 1-2. In these games, just some incidents I want to talk about that we're going to talk about today. There's a red card penalty incident in the Crystal Palace game. There was a handball that could have been a penalty in the Arsenal-Chelsea game. There was, I believe, 3 set-piece goals in the Arsenal-Chelsea game as well, which has been something that we've been talking about with Arsenal this year. There's also was a red card as a result of player indiscipline in the Chelsea-Arsenal game as well on the Chelsea side. We'll talk about that as well. George, real quick, what is your take on the corner kick situation with players grabbing? We talked a little bit about that last night. I felt like it was a big issue in the Chelsea game. Well, how do you think they can address that?
I think in one of the edition of this program, we already talked about this issue of players crowding goalkeepers, a lot of rowdiness when it comes to trying to take corner kicks. You don't see that in other leagues. I normally watch games in the Spanish La Liga. I watch games in the German Bundesliga. I watch games in the French Ligue 1. I don't see those kind of stuffs. But in the Premier League, for me, it seems these things is beginning to take away the beauty of the game because that's not football. We are not saying you can't score through corners, but we are not the only league in the world. We have other leagues, and people play and they win games. So you can win games you can score from corners without trying to crowd the goalkeeper. You see a lot of pushing and a lot of stuff like that, which makes the game looks very, or it makes it not enjoyable anymore. And that's what we saw in the Arsenal game, which to me, we've talked about it. Something has to be done about it. Goalkeepers have to be protected. Players have to be protected when there is any corner kick. So
Yeah.
VAR has to pay attention to whatever happens in the box. If there is any kind of sign of pushing or stuff like that, even if it results into a goal, the goal should be overruled, if you ask me. If such measures are taken, it will reduce those kind of events from happening. That's what I feel. I don't know what you think about that.
I mean, I think there is a solution, that you have to call it consistently over the course of a year and say this much contact is allowed and this much contact isn't. It's a sport that technically doesn't allow contact from a defender onto a forward. Of course, in real life, there's a little bit of what I feel like is acceptable contact that I feel like the refs need to call consistently throughout the year across every single game. It does not matter when. And I do feel like they should establish this is what acceptable contact is on a corner kick. I felt Arsenal crossed the line several times today on what I felt would have been that acceptable contact, and it made the game borderline unwatchable. I will say it was an entertaining game for the first half. The second half devolved quite a bit. I think that actually the Saliba goal was actually a very well worked set piece. They cleared it all the way clear of the far post. They headed it back to Saliba. Sanchez was off his line. I felt Sanchez was terrible today, but neither goal was his fault, but he was awful in general, just coming out of the box, making bad decisions, bad with his feet. I felt Chelsea, again, the first half was actually quite entertaining. The second half kind of devolved into a bit of slop. Both teams were just playing intense. And then the Pedro Neto incident, I felt was what I have said is one of the crux problems of this Chelsea team all season in discipline, because I don't feel like there's enough player leadership as a direct result of their transfer strategy. And I think that's an incident where there's at least 1 point loss based on that Pedro Neto incident, at maybe 2 or 3. George, what do you have to say to Pedro Neto?
Joe, if you ask me, I don't think this has to do with the age of the players. The problem Chelsea is having is they don't have leaders in the team.
Which is a
Now,
direct result of players. of
No,
ages of players.
because Pedro Neto is 25 years old. Somebody who is 25 years old is not a baby, it's not a young player.
No, he's not.
That's somebody who is advanced in age. Someone like Wesley Fofana is not a young player, it's so far as I'm concerned. So if such players are picking up red cards, to me, it has nothing to do with their age, it has to do with the players' discipline. And why we have that is because you don't have players who are leaders. Because Chelsea doesn't have much leaders in their team. If you look at the Arsenal team, you see the likes of David Raya, the way they talk, the way they try to push the players. You see Gabriel Magalhaes, you see a player like Declan Rice. They have a lot of players who are acting like leaders. Chelsea doesn't have that. The only person I see who maybe acts like a leader is just Rich James, the captain.
Reece James.
Every other person, I don't see that. Now you can, if you look at the game, you see that even at some point, Enzo Fernandez also got a yellow card. That yellow card was unnecessary. And we see this a lot with Chelsea players because if you look at what resulted into Pedro Neto's red card, the first incident is avoidable. Because why are you going to the referee to argue over a goal? You have a captain.
Yeah.
Most of these players, they are aware of these
Mm.
rules. Most times, when you have a complaint, most times the captains are the ones who have the right to do that. So
George,
why get yourself involved in such?
you're right on a lot of fronts, but I will say I think that my stance on the Chelsea transfer, Pedro Neto is 25, but he spent the last 1.5 years in Chelsea, 2.5 years in Chelsea, in a locker room where he is one of the oldest players at 25, and in a locker room where he's not going to get called out by anybody but Reece James because Cucurella is older than him, but like most of that team is younger, and they're probably afraid to tell off Pedro Neto. I feel like 23-year-old player, which is what Neto was when he signed, grows in discipline and mentality when a 28, 29-year-old player like hold him accountable after incidents like this. While I do feel like Reece James is a high character guy who does his best to do in team leadership, Chelsea has gotten rid of guys on this team who, I felt have fulfilled that leadership role. Conor Gallagher is one. Thiago Silva. He'd obviously be gone by now, but I feel like they pushed him out a year early. And the result is Caicedo, Enzo, Pedro Neto, Fofana had a red card a couple weeks ago. A lot of these are avoidable, and I feel like it's going to cost them. It's the difference between on talent. Chelsea has a better squad than I feel United or Aston Villa, but I feel like they're going to finish behind them this year because of discipline.
Because look at a team that has gotten 7 red cards in the Premier League and 9 in all competitions. Because I remember they got 1 red card in the Champions League and won.
Yeah.
I think that was Yao Pedro, and then 1 in the Carabao Cup, which was Leon Delap. So 9 for all, that is for all competition. And we still have some games left in the Premier League and also Champions League. And you're already having this amount of red cards. It doesn't speak well of a team. Teams that normally get these red cards are low teams that are low, teams that are in the lower level. Those are the teams. If you even look at the records in the Premier League, you notice that these are teams that struggles are the ones that normally have those kind of high amount of red cards. Not when you have player of these qualities, and then because of indiscipline, you just get red cards. It's really very appalling, and it's a very sad situation. And if they want to get any close to the Champions League, they need to work on that. If not, it will be very difficult for Chelsea to make the top 5 if they continue with this approach. Because I notice it seems they don't learn from past mistakes. Because how can Wesley Fofana get the red card last weekend and then this weekend again you are getting another red card? It shows you don't learn. And if you look at the game they played against Burnley, there was no lesson learned from the draw they played against Leeds United. That was why they came to the Burnley game. Instead of them to kill off the game when they were leading by 1-0, they were so relaxed until they drew that game again. So one thing I've noticed with this Chelsea team is they don't learn from their past mistakes. So until they start taking serious measures, serious steps to learn from their previous mistakes, it will be difficult for them to get good results.
Again, George, I'll say I feel like it's a lack of accountability culture due to lack of. I'm not in the locker room. I don't have sources. I don't know, but just outside looking in, That's what I see. And one thing I'll say that one of the reasons that lower clubs tend to get more red cards than higher clubs is because the teams lower in the table is because they have less possession, less of the ball, so
Exactly.
it's more likely to foul. And Chelsea is in these games with 55-60% possession most weeks, not today obviously, but against Burnley they have the ball 55-60% of the time, which is a lot. And to give
Yes.
up all these yellows and a red against Burnley is insane. I mean, it's just really crazy how many red cards they're getting, and it's costing them. I feel like they have a more better squad than Villa or United, probably not Liverpool, and I feel like they're going to finish behind all three teams.
But
So
Joe, what is so painful about these red cards is most times those fouls are unnecessary. They are things that are avoidable. When you get, it's more like being reckless when
I'm
you get cards.
smiling because from the you say painful on the outside looking in, I do not feel bad for Chelsea. Chelsea fans have decided to support a club who has been poured in millions of dollars over the last 20 years. That is a soulless club in my opinion, funded by oil money. So I don't feel that bad for Chelsea as a club or their fans. But it is kind of interesting to watch in the moment as a relative neutral. So, George,
Joe,
huh?
I have a question for you. If you look at the game very well, do you think David Raya saved the day for Arsenal today?
I think he had a good game. I don't think any saves he made would. I don't think he made any saves that most Premier League keepers wouldn't make. I think the value in an elite keeper versus a good keeper versus an average keeper is more. Um, an elite keeper can hold on to the ball a little bit better, can make slightly better saves. But I don't think he made saves that most Premier League keepers wouldn't make. Allison would have made all those saves, but Raya did have a good game, and I feel like he's one of the reasons Arsenal are top of the table. I think he's a
But there
very good
was
keeper.
there was an incredible save he made that requires a very good reflex.
On
The one I
Garnacho,
was talking about was there was a kind of a cross that Garnacho made. I remember when John Bowen made similar cross in Chelsea game against West Ham. We had similar scenario that Robert Sanchez couldn't stop. So it was something similar. So for him to react so fast to stop that, it shows that he's a keeper with a very good reflex. And he has made a lot of saves this season that has really helped out Arsenal. For me, I feel he really helped the team to get the win today because when Arsenal were playing one man advantage, I expected them to have more possession of the ball. But it seems a lot of pressure is on the team, and that prevents them from really expressing themselves because it was as if they were playing 11-11 when it was 11 against 10. I didn't see Chelsea was even having chances of even getting the
yeah,
equalizer. So I feel this Arsenal team is really under pressure, and it is telling on the way they play their games. I don't know if you have the same thoughts.
I've said I felt that Arsenal are under pressure. I think they're more up for bigger games, and that pressure that mentality of feeling the pressure might get to them more in smaller games like Wolves away and things like that as the season progresses. But 2 points is not a big gap, and 10 points is a long time. I think City will nick them to the title, but there's so much stuff that can happen in 900 minutes of football for Arsenal. So we will see. I'm excited to watch as in relative neutral, and I think Arsenal will not win the title this year. George, really quick. Also, George, I think we're both in agreement on this, so there's not much to discuss. Right before the Chelsea goal, there was a red. I felt like a handball from Declan Rice. He was holding, was it Yao Pedro, and yeah, he flicked up his elbow intentionally. The ball hit
Yes,
his elbow,
yes, yes,
and
yes.
that's by the letter of the law. That's a penalty, and
It
I
was
don't
a
know
clear
why it wasn't
penalty.
called. So we're both in agreement. There's not much to talk about there. I'm disappointed they didn't catch it. Let's move on though to Man United versus Crystal Palace, which the opening goal was a great play by Palace, a great header.
Yes, yes, yes.
But then the biggest incident of the game, there was a foul by
Lacroix, yeah.
Lacroix.
Yes,
I don't know how to say
yes.
his name, but Cunha, I think, was outside the box,
Outside
running
the
in.
box. And
There's
the
a little bit of contact between
counted.
Lacroix and Cunha, and it continued into the box. Cunha went down, red card, penalty, and the game was completely changed. George, I've given you my speech earlier today about I feel like there's an acceptable level of contact, and the defender I don't feel like had a groggiest contact, and that Cunha went down early. I felt he was looking for it, Cunha. When I look at this, I think as a defender, I should be able to do that to an attacking player, and that player should not go down. I think it was a bad call that changed the game. So did Oliver Glasner, and he's a little bit more invested. George, do you feel the red card was justified?
It was a very harsh call, if you ask me. Uh, what the referee would have done was maybe give a yellow card. That red card was too harsh. And if you look at the game very well, you notice that Anderson, from all indications, has a more advantage of getting to the ball before Cunha gets to the ball. So for me, it was a harsh call from the referee. And this is what you see in the Premier League, which we've consistently been talking about. They need to be consistent when it comes to the calls they make on the field of play. That's one of the problems with the Premier League. So it's something that they need to really do something about. I'm thinking that it would be nice for us to have an independent body that can really assess the way referees perform. Because most times you see that it is still the same referees who come to speak about mistakes that are being made by their fellow colleagues. When you do that, you can't really get proper accountability when it comes to officiating. So there should be an independent body who oversees that, so that referees who are not really doing the right thing, and maybe they get penalized or maybe sanctioned. That will help the game to grow. But that's not what we are seeing in the Premier League. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, in the moment, it's really hard to get stuff right. These guys are world class playing super high speed, and refs are really good. They get 90% of calls right, and I think it's amazing. I couldn't do what they do, but there is 10% of calls that they get wrong, and 10% of those calls go into VAR. And I don't know how you possibly have multiple slow angle videos of something like this and still aren't able to call it consistently. This has been a problem for years where these calls have been inconsistent. Now I'm going to use an example where last week Spurs had a goal called back due to a shove in the back from Kolo Muani on Gabriel. This week, Spurs had a goal scored on them from a shove in the back. It was by Raul Jimenez on one of the Tottenham defenders that led to a goal. I feel like both of those should have been goals. I felt it was the same amount of contact. And last week Spurs got screwed, and this week they got screwed. In reality, I think they got screwed last week, and this week was well within the bounds of the rules. And it should have been a goal. They would have lost both weeks anyway. This did not influence the results, but the lack of consistency is what's really irritating to me. Because as somebody who's played, I try and gauge every single game how much contact this referee is going to allow. Some referees in adult leagues, if you go down and slide at all, they will call a penalty. It doesn't matter, and it is wrong. But I need to know that so that I can know how to play. These players are the same. We need consistently, week to week, in terms of what contact is acceptable in all situations. It needs to be defined. It needs to be generally accepted by players. And I feel like on things like corners, it should maybe be a little bit different than things like an open play. And overall, I feel like it's just gotten to a point where every single team is pushing for every advantage. And there's parts of this games that are just unwatchable and just very just I just want to watch a fair game, and it's frustrating.
So, Joe, do you think Manchester United will finally finish third? Because the way they are going, they are only left with just Premier League games. There's nothing else they are fighting for. Just they are fighting for the top four. Do you think with the schedule they have and the number of games they'll be playing compared to the other teams in contention with them, like Aston Villa, Liverpool, and Chelsea, who are involved in other competitions, do you think they will end up finishing third in the Premier League?
No, I don't. I do feel like the gap is so small between second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, and I do feel like it's just anything can happen. It's so hard to make a prediction, and to be honest, I don't think Liverpool, Aston Villa, or Man United are kicking themselves if they get third or fourth or fifth. Like they obviously don't want to get sixth, but they don't care about between the difference between maybe they care about the third, fourth, eighth, and fifth, but it doesn't move the needle. I think especially for Aston Villa, who has a very good chance of winning Europa, and Liverpool, who has to have hopes of winning the Champions League and FA Cup. I think Aston Villa's still in the cup as well. I forget, but
Yes, they are playing the Europa League.
no, I mean the FA Cup.
Yeah,
But both of those teams have to have hopes of other trophies and want to qualify for the Champions League. But yeah, I don't think United get it because I feel like Unai Emery and Arne Slot are just better coaches than Michael Carrick and George. That United's run of form is unsustainable, and they've ridden a great run of form into 51. If they prove me wrong, they prove me wrong. What do
they
you think,
have
George?
they have very experienced players like Bruno Fernandes, the likes of Casemiro. These are very experienced players. Harry Maguire. These are players that are very experienced, and I feel at this critical point, that's where you see such players can handle this kind of pressure. So that
We'll
is one
see.
thing that is making me feel Manchester United will finish third. But one of the games that will decide who finishes in the top five going to be the Chelsea team gameplay. I mean, Chelsea game against Manchester United at Old Trafford. Chelsea will also be playing Aston Villa at the Villa Park, and then Chelsea has to go to Anfield to play against Liverpool. So these games are going to be very, very important.
Well,
So
George,
the result will determine how far those teams will finish in the top five race.
I'm excited to root against Chelsea 3 times in those 3 games. So I'm excited. But let me round up today by just asking our standard questions. What do you think? Do you think Manchester United finish third? George thinks they do. I think they won't. Let us know your thoughts. Number 2, was the Lacroix incident in the Crystal Palace game a penalty? Was it a red card? How was the Declan Rice incident? Was that a handball? Was that a penalty? How can you handle holding on penalty kicks in this league? How can we make it better, more watchable for fans? And the last question was the whole Tottenham incident, goal last week, goal this week. Again, how do you feel like we can best, as viewers, as basically customers of the Premier League, tell them we want consistency and deal with that? Let us know your thoughts. Thank you for listening.